have the right thing selected. There we go. Now we're getting close. All right. It looks like we're going live. And we are. Woohoo!
We are live.
World.
Woo!
We've got a very short pre-show tonight.
And just under the wire again.
Sliding it in there.
People who have seen that movie, Fast and Furious, have never seen us get ready for a show. You think that's fast? Heck yeah. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the BA Zones Live. Smallest pre-show you've ever encountered. 2 minutes to go before the live show. Tonight we're going to be talking about testing for business analysts. And if you think as a BA, that's right. If you think you as a BA you weren't going to be involved in testing, think again.
Oh yeah.
And we're going to try to give you some tips, walk you through that a little bit, and give you some tips on testing. And as soon as the great and fabulous Oz behind the curtain gets us all set and ready,
I need to get a wand. Okay, so the other thing we want to tell you before we get rocking and rolling here is my little chat capture tool. Facebook is fighting against it, so I will do my best to capture everything. If you think I might have missed you, feel free to put it in there again. I do have it up on its second screen, so hopefully I should be able to capture it no problem. And you folks on Periscope, thanks and welcome back. Whoops, see, now I'm getting sound I didn't want. Hang on. We seem to be working on Periscope, so let's keep our fingers crossed. Shh, don't tell them it's working.
Oh my goodness.
Don't
you got 1 minute.
How you doing
there?
We're doing okay.
Tech gods.
Yes, we must burn the candles and leave the offering so that the tech gods do not fight back tonight.
Lordy, lordy, we're going old school. Old school once again.
Hey, whatever gets it done.
That's true. That's true. Hope everybody's having a fabulous week so far. Just getting into the week and had a great weekend.
Hopefully you're having the lovely weather we've had. Oh my goodness, it was gorgeous.
I went on Friday. I went to a AAA, what is it, AAA minor league baseball game for all you baseball fans out there, where there was a major brawl on the field between the two teams. And there
what they think it was, hockey?
I know, it's not so often that you get a ball game and a fight, so it was great.
Yeah.
And no fights tonight, folks, and we are at the 8 o'clock hour. And are we all set, Kathleen?
I think we are.
Okay.
Let's give it a go.
So let's give it a go. So tonight, as I said, we're going to be talking about testing for BAs. And as BAs, business analysts, we do a lot of testing, even though we think we shouldn't be. We do wind up doing it. And sometimes, if there's no quality assurance team, we wind up doing all of it. So it just depends on the organization and the size of the organization you're in. So before we get into that, Kathleen, do you have where you can find us and all those fun places up? Because if you want to just go over where they can catch us and all that fun stuff before I get started.
Yeah, we're going to have to wing it. I didn't get a chance to bring that up. Maybe I can bring it up later.
You can find us on there. You can find us on Instagram. Where can you find us? At thebazone.com, our website, and I'm doing this from memory now. On Instagram and Twitter and YouTube and Periscope. Did I miss any?
YouTube, Periscope, Facebook,
I think we're good.
The website, Instagram. You said Instagram, right?
Said Instagram. Got them all.
I think we got them all. Yeah,
okay,
yes.
Great. So if you know anybody who finds this information entertaining or interesting, drag them here and make them watch with you. So let's talk about software testing. I just want to go over some of the basics really quick around software testing. So what is the purpose of software testing? So at a very high level, the purpose is to communicate the quality of the system based on the requirements, which typically would include business requirements, the functional, the non-functional, the technical specifications, any design documents, and also that it meets the needs of the users who are going to be using the system. So basically, does it do what it was designed to do, and does it do it well? So at a more granular level, with testing, we're looking for things like, is it user-friendly? Is it intuitive, easy to use, easy to navigate? Is it logical? Does it follow the user's workflow? Is it fast and accurate? Does it cover all the scenarios or the use cases, if we're writing use cases as business analysts, that could happen? Are all the checks and balances in place? Is it role specific if it has to be? Does it allow you to create, add, edit, update, delete, save, cancel? Does it perform calculations and algorithms correctly? Does it provide the appropriate inputs, outputs, reporting that might be needed? And does it integrate with other devices or applications if it has to? And do reports or dashboards or export functionality work? Those type of things. So, and although it's not a purpose of testing, it may also identify requirements that were missed or future enhancements that come up during user acceptance testing, and we'll get into that in a few seconds. And Kathleen, would you say that about covers the overall purpose of software testing in your vast opinion?
Absolutely. We need to be the ones to catch it before our poor customers do, and very often we are the ones who will be testing it. Even if you have a QA department, it's a good idea for us to test before it gets there, because again, everything that we can catch early, we can get fixed. If you catch it too late in the process, especially if you're in an agile environment, sometimes they're like, well, it's going to have to wait till the next round, and maybe that's not such a good idea. So catch them early, kill them early.
That next round may never come, depending on what's coming up next.
Well, yeah, and then other priorities pop up, and suddenly it gets pushed down the list, and so the earlier you catch it, the better. And document.
So yes, let's talk about some of the areas that we would be testing in, or the levels of testing that a BA may be involved in. So at the very beginning, when a developer is coding, they'll be doing unit testing and integration, system and regression testing, end-to-end testing or individual feature testing. We hope they do. It's really important that they do that. So mainly only developers, this is usually done in an area or an environment called development, and usually only developers are in that area, depending on how many what they call environments you have. Normally you might have a development environment and then a staging environment before it goes to production. And there might be other environments in between, but those are the big three that you have. So typically only developers are in that area. So coders can keep coding while other things are being tested in different environment without interfering each other. So it's, for example, so if a developer is coding a feature that only a specific user can view, then he or she can create mock data and actually test that feature to ensure that their code, produces the expected outcome. BA involvement at this point is minimal, except where the developer may be asking you questions to clear, there might be requirements that they're unclear about. Not that you did make them clear, but they might have some questions around it or information they need. A little tip here for a BA is if you can develop a relationship with a developer, you can get a sneak peek into that development area. And that's what Kathleen was talking about, getting that early view to make sure that what is being developed, is what is going to work for the users. And it's not that you'd be testing at this level. It's sort of just a view, take a peek and take a look at it. And it's really important if you don't have a web designer, if the developer is also designing, the layout, if you haven't given them wireframes or comps, and even if you do, they may take developer license, and that's great if they can make it better, but it's great if you can develop that relationship ahead of time and get some of that information. And, the BAs are closer to the user than a developer, and sometimes when if anything is left open to interpretation, it's going to be interpreted by the developer, which may be, overly technical, is because it's coming from a technical perspective. So anything to add on that piece, Kathleen, on the unit developer testing?
See, I didn't think she was going to cut to me on that because she knows this is one of my favorite rants, but I'm not going to rant on this because that's a whole other show. But
there you go.
Yeah. So what I will, this is developers coding front ends. I love developers. They're lovely people. They're very talented. They're very smart. However, they're too smart. They're too talented and they don't think the way normal people do, which is why it's not always such a great idea for them to be designing the front end. That's all I'll say on that. But I will say, just as a it might happen to you story, if you go and you ask for access to a test environment or the development environment so that you can see it before it hits test, you may be told it doesn't exist, we only do it on our local machines, it's not active, you don't have the permissions to access it, a lot of things. Or you may just be told no. Don't give up. If you can't get it through one point of access, wait, try another one later on. Sooner or later you will get it. I'm not saying that this has ever happened to me, but sooner or later you can get it. And then as you're doing it, the more they see the benefit of you catching things early and getting it to them and not making a fuss about it, but just saying, hey, got this, maybe you want to take a look, warm and friendly, we're all on the same team, you will get less pushback about all those kind of things. And you will start to be seen as more of the member of the team rather than those BAs. That's the encapsulated version of my typical rants on this one.
He has a lot of rants, can you tell? All right. So the next level of testing would be, and there could be multiple methods involved here, but the big three are the unit, and then we go on to the, quality assurance testing, typically done by a quality assurance team, a QA team, if there is one. A lot of companies don't have one, and unfortunately the BA and users get stuck doing this testing. But, it's really important if you're a company out there and you're doing a startup to have a web designer, a developer, a QA, and BA. But quality assurance, it's typically, a team, hopefully more than one. They're going to create and coordinate the strategy and approach for the testing. And that typically includes scope of testing, type of testing, the method they're going to use, whether they're going to be using manual, automated, or both, or software to test on. They create the test plans, test timelines of when it's going to be done, how the defects will be managed, what they find, and how that's going to be handled, given back to developers. And any resources required for testing, bodies. And they also may facilitate the user acceptance testing as well. As far as BA involvement goes, it depends on the organization, but we recommend that you build the test plans based off of your fantastic use cases, and you work together with the QA team to create that so you can see what they're testing. And also, typically, business analysts are better at driving the user acceptance testing because they've been dealing with the users. But once the business requirements are completed, the test plans are typically created. Sometimes they happen, alongside of each other, but a lot of things aren't ironed out to a minute detail. So they usually wait, and they can edit it at the end. And a tip here for QA to make it, for BAs to make it easier for QA is to have really excellent use cases. So, when you're building testing and use cases, there's all these different types of methods. You've got top down, bottom up, white box, gray box, wine box. But you really need to cover the positive flow, that path that typically happens from beginning to end, and then the negative flow, any alternative flows that could happen, error handling, things like that. And a part of the test plan that's not typically, it's undocumented, it's not documented, what I like to call drunk uncle testing. And if you can say that 3 times fast, you're not a drunk uncle. And if you don't drink, if you don't have a drunken relative, you could ask a teenager, because they'll just, and basically these are things that you try to break the system. Drunk uncle is sort of just banging on the keys and trying to break things. So I thought it would be fun to just go over some of those tips for BAs and things to test for, other than the negative and the positive flow and all the alternative stuff. Some of the things we look for when we're testing an application. So I thought it would be fun to go back and forth with Kathleen on this and start. So I'll start. Does that sound good to you, Kathleen?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay. So just making sure you're there. So
actually, you know what? Before we give them that, hang on one sec.
Okay.
Before we give them that, let's do a little promotion here. So we do want to mention to you that you are more than welcome to sign up for our mailing list. So if you go to bazone.com/mailing list, you will get onto the mailing list, and then you will be among the first to know about all the new cool stuff that we're doing, the shows that we're doing. Sometimes we send out surveys, to see if you have any ideas of shows or content that you want us to do. So we invite you to come and do that. We promise you that we do not sell or share or give away your information, so you can feel safe giving us your email address. This is just solely for us to be able to communicate with you, and this way you get the inside line before everybody else. So again, that's the bazone.com/mailing list, and we hope that you will sign up and come join the parties. Okay, now we can go play.
We can go play. We had a bunch of people sign up recently, so thank you.
Yes, that's very exciting.
Drunk uncle testing.
Yeah.
And I really wish like a martini glass would come right across right now. I thought about that actually, putting one in Tinker's hand, my dog, and just having it. Hey, good night. But
if I wasn't getting here 4 seconds before we had to go live, we could do that kind of stuff.
That's right. I could have been creative. But okay, so how do you test other than going through the positive and the negative testing? The fun part of testing is trying to actually break the application. So my first one is I try to type in characters, alpha characters out into numeric fields, or numeric that are numeric fields only, or numbers in fields that are supposed to be alpha fields only, or type in special characters and a whole bunch of them and see what happens. That's my first one. Kathleen, you got one?
That's one of my favorites. I also call that the cat walked across the keyboard test because it's the kind of thing that is going to happen. You're going to get these random weird characters, and so you need to be able to handle them. I'm just going to tack onto that for a second. You also need to make sure that you're putting in the phone number with the periods or the dashes or spaces or none, and make sure all of that works. That's just me tacking onto yours. So the other thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you test on different browsers. And it really is as simple as opening up your different browsers side by side and opening the app and doing the same thing in all of them all the way across to make sure that the response times is right, that you're getting the same response across, because you'd be surprised at what happens. Don't worry about it being a pixel for pixel match. That's not what's important. What's important is that it looks good and that people are able to do what you want them to accomplish inside of there, and that the responses are the same across the board. If some button is a little bit higher or lower in one browser or the other, don't freak over that. That's just browsers are going to handle the code that they get a little differently. That's not the end of the world. It's important that it be functional and clear and that it work the way it's intended. Everything else is just gravy.
That's a really good one. Actually, that just happened to me recently. Someone sent me something and said, go to this link. And I was in a particular browser, which I think it was Microsoft Edge, I think it was. And it didn't recognize it at all. Didn't recognize, I'm sorry.
9 times out of 10. Well, no, but see, that's important. Especially those of us who are technical, tend to stay away from Microsoft browsers. You do need to make sure that you install it and you load it. Load Opera, load Firefox, load all of them. They're low weight, they're free, so there's no excuse for not doing it. But that's the exact case that you're testing for, because the Microsoft products are always the one that go wonky.
And it's interesting too, because that was the default browser for that particular laptop that I had. So interesting, yeah. So, okay, that's an excellent one. So another one, getting back to the fields, in some fields, especially comment fields where you're putting in text, a lot of times you want to type in as many characters and as many numbers as possible to test the size of that box, because sometimes you'll keep typing and you won't even know that it's cut off. It hasn't even told you, but it just cuts off your text. So that's another one of my favorite ones that I'd like to put in there.
Oh yeah, that's a really important one. And as much as you can, you may not always be able to get access, but if you can get access to the data results of what you're putting in, that's another thing that's important to test. One way or another, usually you can get some visibility into that, because it's that kind of thing. You may have put in 500 characters and it looks like it took it, and then if you go and look at the database, you'll find out that it only took 100. And there was no warning to the user, there was no indication, that type of thing. Another thing when you're filling out those kind of forms, If they don't give you like a drop list for like states and that kind of thing, try all the combinations. Make sure it takes the two letter, the lowercase spelling, the uppercase spelling, the with space, without spaces, and the other things, particularly with forms. I'm going to wrap this all up as one big one. Make sure you put some extra spaces at the end and at the beginning and see whether or not it takes it and see whether or not it makes it to the database. Because a lot of times, if they aren't paying attention, maybe they coded that bit just before or just after lunch, they may forget to do that kind of cleanup, and that can really blow up your process, your database. It can turn into a real problem. That's another thing you want to watch out for.
Mm-hmm. And the same with saving to a database to add on.
Did you just hear church bells, or was that me?
Well, actually, I'm hearing, what do you call those, like after those big things after work, the time or whatever that means. I don't know what it means.
Sound like church bells to me. Sorry, I was like, wait, am I having a stroke? Am I hearing bells?
Yeah. She's hearing bells. Another angel got their wings somewhere, and you're in tune.
Sorry, just didn't expect that. That came out of blue.
Okay, yeah, it's a live show. You never know what's going to happen.
There's always something.
To tack on to that, whether it's saving in the database, another thing to check as well too is if you're entering data on one page and you get to another form or the next page, go back to the previous one and see if it's still visible, because sometimes it's not. So that's just a tack onto yours. You can go back and forward and see if things are actually displaying appropriately. A lot of pages save as you go type of thing, so you want to just check that out. Another one is like when you have radio buttons or checkboxes. A radio button should only allow one choice. Checkboxes, typically you select one to many. And also with drop lists where you can select, you want to make sure those are all kind of functioning the way they're supposed to.
Definitely. And you want to make sure that they don't disable each other, because that happens too. Some real basic things. Make sure that you click on all the links. Make sure you click through the navigation and that you end up where you're supposed to go. So, if you're clicking on the FAQ, then it takes you to the FAQ page, not to the Contact Us page, that type of thing. And while you're at that, also just check on the internal links. If you're referencing, the pages back and forth or the content back and forth, click on as many of those as you possibly can and make sure that they are behaving as expected, because you'd be surprised. Also include in that any links like that are going to trigger an email, like the mail to links. It's got the email address. When you click on it, it should open up the email client so you can send an email. If you have a phone number on there, it's 2018 now, so please make sure that it has been coded so that if somebody's accessing it on a device that can make calls, whether it's a phone or some other device, that when they click on it, it does trigger that. So it should have the right tel code on it. Because these are things that in this day and age people expect to see.
Right. Yeah, and that's a great point too. And actually all of those links that take you someplace, make sure you can get back, because sometimes they just leave you hanging there and you can't get back to the page you were. The same applies for list pages. These are just some simple design things too. They're not necessarily errors, but the way to test, but a list page, if you're clicking on a detail page, when you go back to that list, does it maintain, if there was a sort on it and a filter, does it maintain that filter? Or do you have to go back to the top and refilter the whole list again? So that persists, being able to go back, that little anchor, is an important one for users, especially.
Okay. Next up on my list of favorites is testing your cookies. So make sure that you go in.
Wait a minute, hold on. That just sounds so wrong.
Too tacky for you?
Are your cookies done, darling? Check the oven.
I'm just a little hungry because I didn't have breakfast, lunch, or dinner yet.
Always goes to food.
All right, so I'll give a little food. So cookies are small files that are used by websites and web applications to remember basically user session data. So that's what really turns it from a web page into a web application in a lot of cases. It's also used for tracking SEO kind of stuff and all that, but that's not so much what we're generally tracking. Although, if you're working on a project that is about the SEO tagging and all that, then yes, you would be watching for that kind of stuff. But what you want to do is you want to make sure that, if you go in and you do a bunch of testing and then you just close the browser and come back, that you're not seeing any information that would concern somebody to suddenly see it there again. So for example, if you had filled out a credit card form And you want to make sure that that credit card number is not still showing because they came back within the cookie session and the cookie hadn't cleared. Or even worse, that maybe they aren't clearing the cookies. By the same token, you want to see what happens if you are working on something and then you go up and you clear the cookies. There's different ways to do that in different browsers. And if you want to, well, I can do another session on that some other night. But it's really easy. You just usually go in and there's usually just an option to select in the menus. It's not hard, really. There's even plugins that you just do one click to do it. But the idea is that you want to test as you're going through your process. Try clearing the cookies to see what happens. Does it completely blow everything up? Does it give any warning to the user? Is there any, problems that come up out of that? Because those are the kinds of things that, again, are going to happen. People's sessions are going to drop. Maybe they're in a corporate environment and all of a sudden somebody, from IT security sent out something and it went and updated everybody's system in the background while somebody was working. These are the kind of cases that you want to try to anticipate as much as you can. I mean, there's only so much we can anticipate. But if you create a little checklist of these things we're talking about, you increase the odds of when something wonky happens, your system is going to handle it elegantly. And that's the kind of thing that really builds trust in your customers or your users.
Right. And along those same lines, not necessarily the cookies, but, displaying information that should or shouldn't be there, especially if you're working in the healthcare industry, and where you have all these HIPAA laws where you're only supposed to see the amount of information you need to see to do your job. So if there are these, what we call roles, specific user roles in the system, like a nurse versus a doctor, etc., you want to definitely test those roles to make sure everybody's seeing what they're supposed to be seeing. And in the same respect, when you're doing the requirements, there may be views that, or certain pieces of information, and you want to try to lump it together if you can, when you're, doing a wireframe or something to make it easier for the developer. But you want to test those things and make sure that that particular role can only see what they're supposed to see. That's a big one in healthcare.
Yeah. Well, in healthcare and the financials, there's a lot of places where that's super critical. And just again to tack on, we're tag teaming a lot here. Not only do you want to make sure that if you're in as this user only sees stuff, but there's a lot of environments where the same people are sharing the equipment. So you want to make sure that if user A with access level A signs off, when user B comes in with access level B, that they don't inadvertently see something from A that got carried over because they happen to be on the same environment. It's usually a cookies thing, or there's maybe a problem with the logout process that didn't wipe out enough, but it's the kind of thing that you want to keep a really close eye on because it's the kind of thing that can be missed until it becomes a critical issue.
Right. And other places too, if you haven't built them into your requirements, there's some instances where you want to give the users warnings, like they're going to do something. They're going to delete a record. Do you really want to delete the record? I mean, there's some fail-safes that you should include in your requirements, or you should think about in your designs. And hopefully they're in the requirements or the tech spec before it gets to developers. But those are some things you might just pick up during, QA testing or user acceptance testing.
This is too funny because we did not have time to talk before this session like we usually do. So she's running through her list, and my list is almost like line for line, following what hers is saying. Yeah, I'm getting a little creeped out here.
Sorry.
We've worked together too long. We've known each other too long, clearly, whereas we are definitely tapping into the hive brain. So, along those lines.
And we've been in the business for a long time.
Well, right. We've seen everything at this point. So, along those lines, another thing that you want to pay very close attention to and you want to run all of your tests on is make sure that you're getting all the different messages. So make sure you're getting the success message, the warning message, and the error message. And you want to actually read them because people get tired, they get punchy when they've been working long shifts, and every so often something slips in that they just did, meaning to remove, just to entertain themselves, to keep themselves awake on the project. You don't want that to get out. And, some are more offensive than others, but it's just better to catch them so that nothing unprofessional goes out. You also want to keep an eye on, when you're looking at those kinds of things, for ways that the text can be misinterpreted, because that can be a huge problem. You could take a problem and then make it a worse problem if there's different ways to interpret the message that have been presented. So make sure that they are as crystal clear as you can possibly make them, and that there's no little Easter eggs floating around that you don't want the wrong person to come across. Not that that's ever happened.
That's true. And a lot of applications too. We've designed a lot of applications that have content attached to them. And you want to make sure that content is understandable and readable by, the 80-20% rule, a large group of people. And I forget, Kathleen, you might remember, it might sound insulting, what the level of education that they recommend that, you put verbiage, but I think it depends on the application, quite frankly. But,
well, and the standards have changed over time too, but it generally runs between 4th and 6th grade, depending on what type of tool you're building.
Right.
It sounds
so that's
maybe a little offensive, but it's not really. It just means that they just want it to be clear and unambiguous and, written in a simple language so that nobody has to struggle to figure it out.
Right. And we could go on and on with all of these things to look for and fun things to test for. But I'm just going to give you one more. And Kathleen, if you have one more, because then we'll move on. But one of my pet peeves also is for drop-down lists. When you click on that little drop-down list, you want to make sure that that little container is wide enough to see the entire line in that drop-down list, because sometimes they cut it off. Sometimes it obscures important data that you need to see right underneath it. So those little, the cutoff of the list elements make me a little crazy. So in the drop-down list. So that's my last one for tonight anyway.
Oh, yeah, I think we're going to have to do another one on this. So I'm going to tack on that just a little bit, because the opposite of that drives me crazy. The people who do, fields that are 800 miles wide for everything. So, but like with drop lists, if they just code it and leave it alone, it will automatically go to the size of the largest element in it. So that would be fine. But by the same token, just because you have 18 miles of space doesn't mean that your zip code field should be that size. So make sure that they're proportional and correct for the content that you're looking to collect. So yeah, my last one is going to be one of my favorite things to harp on. Make sure you do some basic accessibility testing. So make sure that you can tab through to get to the important fields, that you can use your keyboard to select from a drop-down list, that you can use your keyboard to select with the like a submit button or whatever. Those are the real basic ones, but whether your mouse has died, if you're using a wireless one and the battery has died, that may be the only way you have to get through it. It's an accessibility thing. We're in another season again where I'm seeing more and more lawsuits hit. So just do the quick sanity check to make sure that the basic functionality is there. Make sure also that you are testing it on not just a keyboard and mouse setup, but on a touch device, because while everybody's like, well, it's a desktop thing, but what is the meaning of desktop these days? Okay, everything that I'm looking at right now, take my word for it, touchscreens. Every one that I've got here is a touchscreen, because that's what I buy, except for my latest laptop, which unfortunately I couldn't get it for, but it does have eye tracking, which is another conversation. But don't assume that everybody is doing this with the same setup that you have. So make sure that you try a couple of different things, a couple of different screen sizes, different resolutions, because again, depending on where they are, maybe they've got glare, maybe they've got a really old monitor and it's hard to see, maybe they've got a great high def, ultra high def, and all the little details are standing out. As many different variations as you can test, understanding that you can't get all of them, the more you test, the better. And it doesn't have to take long.
Right. And it's great if QA can do most of this, but you want to help them along too and double check.
Yeah. I can tell you, most QA departments don't do that kind of stuff, because they're so busy going through their test cases and doing their regression testing and their legacy testing and their cross-system testing. They don't tend to get around to that, so if we don't do it, 9 times out of 10 it doesn't get done.
Right. And again, well, I agree with you there. And again, though, I try to build relationships with all the different team members so that, when we get together, we can kind of say, hey, it'd be nice if we tested this just to make sure, especially when it's going out into the universe there. So we can try. We can hope.
We try. We spread the information and we hope that it takes seed someplace.
We hope that it does. Business analysts, if you're working on an agile environment too, and you're working on sprints or that, you may have to get to the next piece to get those requirements nailed down. So sometimes it's nice if you can't do a lot of testing, at least do some of these initial pass-throughs and these high-level things. Let QA then test the bulk for all the errors, because we don't have time to be slowed down by the page errors and everything else like that.
Right.
So let them do a huge bulk of testing and then look at it again before we go to UA testing. Again, if you can write the test plans together, or at least meet occasionally about them, it'll help with the traceability of bugs to ensure that everything's been tested.
Yeah. So I mean, just short story. I've been working on a new place. We're not working together for a change, which makes me sad. But I've been I started off trying to get access. No, blah, blah. Long story short, in a matter of a couple of weeks, they're like, oh, okay, would you take a look at this? Because what was happening was QA was testing, and QA is absolutely being diligent. They're going through and they're doing their testing, but they've got a routine for their testing. So that's right. Why, me being kind of rogue and doing, okay, I'm going to take 40 minutes and I'm just going to pound on this thing and see what I find. And then I come up with this list because that's sort of my superpower, is that I break applications. But better I do it than somebody out in the field. So actually I had 3 different teams today come to me and go, could you take a quick look? We think we're ready to hand it off, and QA has approved it, but we just want to make sure. Right. And in all of them, I think one I found like 25 things. The other one I found about 8. So that was, again, it was like a half hour, 40 minutes. I just tried a bunch of different things. And I always keep my screen capture tool handy so that I can screen cap what I'm seeing. In a couple of cases, it was an interaction problem. So if you use something like Camtasia or whatever, which again, we can get into tools some other night, but I was able to do a little movie, because otherwise they have to figure out how to reproduce it to see it. And sometimes it just helps them to actually see it. So for what it's worth, it doesn't have to take a lot of time or money, but it can make a big difference.
Kathleen and I are like the queen aunties of drunk testing. Drunk uncle. We're the drunk aunties of doing that. Yeah. So we like to do it.
What happens if I drop this on my keyboard?
Exactly. I mean, and we like to do it because honestly, we're usually involved in user acceptance testing almost, all the time, because we're dealing with clients and outside customers, internal customers. So we prefer to find that stuff instead of them finding it. So that's why we spend so much time on it. It is so much better from a relationship standpoint to get that out of the way before it's found by things will be found by them. So that brings us, do we have any business before I go to user acceptance testing?
Well, sure. Let's do this one more time for all the people, since we do have some interesting stuff coming up in the next few weeks. We're just encouraging everybody to sign up for the mailing list, because those are the folks that are going to find out about it first. So if you want to be on the inside track for what's coming, what's new, go ahead, sign up for the mailing list. You'll be totally safe. We don't sell it to anybody. We believe in karma. We don't do anything to your email that we wouldn't do to our own. And all we're doing is just using it as a way to communicate with you. So that's the bazone.com/mailing list. And that way you'll know what's going on.
That's right. Total believers. Yep. Namaste, baby. Okay. So,
oh wait, I'm sorry. I didn't have my capture tool. I'm sorry. This is my fault. So I just want to. So Jason has had a couple. Actually, can I bring these up?
That's what I was just going to ask you. Does anybody have any questions? We're going old school with the questions because Facebook is not playing well with our tool.
Let me see, because this came in on. Let's see if I can get this to come up. Okay, yeah, because this came in on YouTube, so fortunately that one's coming up. So this is from Jason. Screen caps make a huge impact on triage and troubleshooting. Totally agree with that. And I won't bring it up, but the other one he said is, he said that's an awesome superpower, breaking apps. Yes. It initially doesn't make me popular with a lot of the developers, but when they realize that I'm doing it to help and to catch things before they become major issues, they usually get on board with it. So yes, eventually they come around, but it's weird. I can't tell you what it is I do, but if somebody puts me in front of an application, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to find what's broken.
That's right.
It's just what I do.
And sometimes you can kind of soften. Thank you, Jason. Sometimes you can soften that blow to the developers by, you're going to find a lot of things along with QA. You are absolutely going to find a lot of things, but you should really highlight the really important ones, because right away, I'm telling you, this happens 99% of the time. A developer will go right to the fact like, oh, she's telling me it's the wrong font size. Okay, that's way low on the list. And actually, when you're building with QA, you want to definitely be involved in saying what the severity level of a particular bug is. And So then you preface that by saying only focus on the high or the severe, critical, whatever you want to call them, bugs. So, you don't want to be the low level font ones, you don't want them focusing on, they'll eventually be fixed, but that's not what needs to be fixed right now. So a lot of times that's a way of sort of, getting, like Kathleen was saying, getting their approval and working well with you because you're helping them find stuff.
Yeah, and just along
Okay.
those lines, one of the things you want to try as much as possible, and part of the reason they do the screen captures and the little screen videos, is because if you report a bug that can't be reproduced, how can they fix it? So when you do find
That's right.
something that is at a severe enough level, you do want to make sure that you can reproduce it, tell them the steps to go through so that they can
Mhm.
go in and find it. Because otherwise, if you do too many that, they can't find, they can't reproduce, they're going to just say, oh, it's just you. And then you'll hear
Okay.
my other favorite, which is, well, it's working fine for me. Like, okay, well, I'm not really going to bring all of our users to your machine. So, but you don't say that. You think
Well, you
it.
know, and if it's working fine for you, check that browser because guaranteed that's what it is.
Yeah. So
Working
that's why you
fine
want to
for
try
you,
the
it's
different
optimizing.
browsers. You want to take the screen caps, do all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. And as soon as you find one that is, especially the severe ones, you want to make sure that you can reproduce it. You write down those steps so that they can quickly go in and reproduce it themselves. Okay, end rant.
Okay. Okay, and Rant. I just realized I didn't plug in my computer, and I'm.
Ooh,
Oh, there we
yes,
go.
make sure you have enough battery
So
life and a power source. These
that's
are important. But that's another good
there
test
we go.
because
That's
users
that
are going to do
first.
that and their battery's going to die on them, and that's another good test.
It's usually part of our setup testing here, but it was like a 2 minutes to go time. Okay,
Yeah,
let's go
good
to
idea.
user acceptance testing without further ado. So, user acceptance testing is what the name is. It's usually involves actual users, or it should involve actual users of the system. They can be super users. It's best to have a mix of skill sets if you're setting up the user acceptance level testing. Folks of different varying skill sets so that you can get uh, an accurate walkthrough of the user acceptance testing. Um, we give them test plans when you do user acceptance testing. Now, QA can provide that for them because sometimes we have to use some valid data um, with users, and even there could be potentially trainers who are involved as well if it's a client because they may be creating training materials. BAs also create training materials on occasion. But together with the QA and BA, you can create the UAT test plans that the users are going to walk through, and they're going to follow the various processes that you've documented in the requirement use cases. And you're going to pick a few. You're going to pick a positive or a negative. And then, of course, you're going to let them do that drunk uncle testing where they just bang on things and just try to break it with different combinations. But when you're creating those UAT test cases, you're going to give them, the conditions needed to execute the test. And it can't be at a QA level. It has to be at a user level. You're going to tell them the steps to perform, and you're going to give them input test data and what they should expect from that. So, what does that give you? It gives them really an idea of how this new system is going to work so they can start to prepare themselves for it. Is it an actual, um, what could actually happen in real life? Sort of, but you're sort of giving them the tests ahead of time. So you know that's going to work. And that's why we also include that, what we like to call the drunk uncle testing, because that is something they're just going to play with it and you're going to come up with issues. Um, uh, a tip for that, so as I was saying, allow them to create their own testing on the fly once they go through those use cases. Encourage them to do the negative testing, the alternate testing, any workaround testing. A lot of folks have workarounds now, and hopefully you caught them during requirements gathering, but there may be some one-offs out there, and they'll come up with different scenarios that may not have been included in the requirements or that. Um, as far as timing, another tip for timing these user acceptance testing, it can occur at the same time that QA is testing. It's typically done on a staging environment, but we really recommend that QA blocks out times where they are not testing, where only the users are testing, so that they're not breaking things potentially as users are walking, through the system for the first time. And if there are any bugs that you know of prior to that user acceptance testing, you got to let those users know upfront about those so that they're not surprised when they see them or find them. You let them know you're working on them. But at this point, by the time user acceptance testing gets to this point, the code should be fairly clean. It typically never is, but I mean, it should be fairly close to clean, because don't forget, you're acting on their behalf when you're viewing it at the unit level testing, if you can, and with the QA team. You are actually the user. You are, the pseudo user. So you're working on their behalf. So at this point, there shouldn't be too many surprises. Are you going to find enhancements or improvements? You're gonna listen to what they're saying as they're doing this. Is it easy to use? And then you're going to start setting your enhancement list for the future. At this point, you hope that they wouldn't need functionality that may delay the release. But that's a whole other issue there. So Kathleen, do you have anything to add about user acceptance testing?
Oh, you know me, I could go for days on that one. All I'm saying right now, well, again, I think a lot of these are going to get broken out into other shows in the future, and if you have a particular favorite you want us to start with, please let us know. But this is not a step that should be skipped, even though as timelines get tighter and budgets get tighter, it does tend to be one of the things that dies off. So again, it's another kind of thing that you can totally go guerrilla with. If they won't give you the time, resources to do it officially, you can do it from everything from, like, you can hire companies, go into their facility, do one-way glass and, video recording and all that kind of stuff, all the way to, like, handing out, like, little gifts to do it. You can do it online. There's places like usertesting.com where you pay, like, a monthly fee, and then they bring individuals that can do the testing, and you can actually see them doing it on whatever device they're working on and walking through your scripts. If you can't do any of that, that's not an excuse to not do some user testing. My friends and family know me well. They see me coming with a laptop. They tend to know what's coming. I have been known to do it in coffee shops. I'll be sitting there, working, waiting for somebody, that looks like maybe they would be, into it. It looks like they're going to, maybe stick around for a little bit, ask them to do some testing, have a timeline. Say, I need, do you have 5 or 10 minutes to do, these things? Make sure you're not coming across creepy-ish, you want to be friendly and, not make them feel like they can't say no. And then if they, do it, maybe buy them a scone or a cup of coffee or something. But yeah, friends, family, I have, sat in the front yard, on nice days. And as people came over, walking their dogs, and their dog comes to meet mine, I'll say, hey, I'm testing this thing. Would you mind taking a quick look? And that's been very helpful information, because they don't know me, they don't know what I'm working on, and I always say to them, say whatever you want. It's not mine. I know I'm testing it for a friend. You can't hurt my feelings, but it would be really helpful to them. And, but keep it short, in those kind of situations, keep it to 2 or 3 minutes. If they want to do more, great, but don't push it because their dog wants to go for a walk. Just, be creative about it, go sit in the break room and maybe, talk to somebody you've never talked to in the company and have them take a look at it. There's lots of ways to do it. You don't have to do hundreds of people. You can get really good data from 3 to 5 people. So don't be shy. Right. Go ahead and do it. I'm an introvert and I do it, so anybody can do it.
This is true. And you don't want to do it long enough that if they're parents, that they keep the children away from you during Halloween.
Right.
That's
exactly. Especially for me, because Halloween's my holiday, so that's very important to me. But it's it for a lot of people it's fun. People like to give their opinions. They like to be asked. That's kind of a flattering thing. But yeah, you don't want it to drag on. You don't want it to feel like work. You want it to be just a quick, hey, take a look at this. What do you think this element would do? And then have them do it. Is that what you expected? What would be different? That kind of thing, and then let it go. It's fun. It can be a lot of fun.
It is fun. And you really would hope that if it's an outside client that they do offer up folks for the UA testing. Even if you sort of persuade them to do that by saying, it would be great if you had super users, from each department or however big this application is, so that they can then support your users. Of course, they'll say, well, why aren't you supporting us? And we can do that, but it's always very handy to have someone in.
If it's in the contract.
So, if it's in the contract. That's right. That's right. And also us writing training manuals if that's in the contract, because
Right.
that is a time-consuming process.
Or
Um,
making training videos. Yeah, I remember that happening.
Writing videos, we've done that. That's right. With Camtasia.
Oh, yeah.
Voiceovers, we got to find somebody who had the best voice because neither one of us really had the great voice. So we had to find somebody who had a voice
Yeah.
like that.
We recruited somebody.
We did. We recruited somebody. So it's always fun.
And
Okay.
she still talks to us today, so it was okay.
She does still do it. Okay. So is that all you have for the UAT? Because
Yeah, I think, because we are way over time here.
Are we over time again? We just get caught up.
Oh, yeah.
We have so much.
We have a lot to talk about. See, this is why we're doing this, because we have a lot of information, we have a lot of experience,
Right.
and it shouldn't be bottled up inside of us. We want to share it with the world, and maybe you can save yourself a little pain by learning from our mistakes and our challenges and skip right over that and get to the good parts.
There you go. Okay. So, on that note, why is all this important? Why participate in testing? I'll tell you why. You wrote those dang requirements. You better make sure they work. That's the number one thing. You need to understand and communicate to everyone that this thing is functioning as you said it would, as you got these user requirements. You know, what was the rationale for this feature? You need to be able to answer that, because sometimes users will go, oh, why did we do this? And you can refer back to those. You're there. You can refer back to those requirements, say, well, this is why you decided to do it this way, type of thing, or we decided. And you'll need to communicate and get agreement from the users. You're the best person to do it. Whether they will give approval, because user acceptance testing means they are accepting what you're putting out there. And in a really good organization, the users can say, this can't go in. So you want to be able to persuade them that certain, low-level bugs like that font change are okay to go live, because that won't hold back a launch. So again, the more you know by being right in there and doing it, the quicker, the better, and the quicker you can respond to those type of issues. And again, you need to shadow them as they test this to help you define any issues, listen for any comments, any places for enhancements. So you could look at your roadmap, if you have a product manager. If not, we've always been the product managers, but you can then build out, the next release for the system. You also may need to identify any areas that might need further clarification or training, because people aren't picking it up. And it may not be that it's not intuitive. It just may be that it's a very complex system because it's a complex process. And you've tried to streamline that as much as possible. But, again, if we're talking healthcare or accounting or finance, legal, you could need additional training. So, and you may be providing those high-level training documents. Again, you want to be able to assess with QA the bug severity when you're in user acceptance testing, and that's why you're doing this. And you may want to, God forbid there's any major changes that happen at this point. But, we don't typically prototype anymore because it's too expensive. And that's why Agile, they build a little thing and then you test it type of, that's how that came about. But we do our best with wireframes and comps to get everything down. But, changes are going to come up, and you are the person who needs to be able to assess those changes and actually take care of that change management process. So, and at this point, as a tip, at that point, when you get to user acceptance testing, I would say only consider changes that actually stop a workflow, something that absolutely has to be in there. Otherwise, it becomes a future enhancement. And those are some of the things, the reasons why I think it's important to test. And I'm sure Kathleen has a few more to end the show, as usual. Yes, no, maybe so. Are you on mute?
Yeah, I was
Yes, she was
preparing something for the end of the show. Yeah, sorry, I didn't want you to have to listen to my keyboard. Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. These are the reasons why this is important, and you don't want to skimp on this. And like I said, whatever level you can do it in, it's better than not doing it at all. So, if you spend a half hour doing it, then that's a half hour more than would have happened otherwise. And as far as, when you're doing it, with actual users, that is just golden, because not only are they helping you with, your project right now, but they may just drop a little nugget in conversation or a random thought that comes out of their head that may be your next project, and it may actually blow the doors off of everything else you've ever done. So definitely keep your ears open, watch what they're doing, listen, for their struggling points. But you never know what other little nugget of information you might get out of there, and try not to dance too much right in front of them. wait till you get back to the office.
You're absolutely right. That nugget has saved, especially if you're dealing with clients and customers, that little nugget can turn into a sales pitch for something else.
Right.
So, and that's win-win, and we see that all the time. That's a very good point, Kathleen.
It's not the reason to do it, but it is a benefit that happens enough to look forward to.
Keeps us working.
That's right. It's a good thing.
All right. Okay. Any other business for this evening? Any other questions out there? Anybody have any comments?
Let me check, because I wasn't doing that. I just actually found something new on Twitter. Twitter's always been a challenge. I've had to use tools and stuff. Well, all of a sudden tonight, I can go back and see previous comments. I'm like, whoa, where did this come from? This wasn't here last week. But no, it looks like we're just having, nice conversations. Other than that, everybody seems caught up, which is great.
Okay. Any other business before we say goodnight?
I am going to, once again, invite everybody to sign up for the mailing list. Well, people jump in and out of the show. And also, we've got some stuff that we're going to be announcing end of this month, beginning of next, and we want our insiders to hear about it first, so you can do that right there. Whoops, that was supposed to go away. There we go. And I brought this up finally. So if you are looking for us anywhere, we are in all of the places you would expect to find us. We have our website, thebazone.com. Lots of information there. If you can't remember where you want to go watch us, or if you can't watch us on your usual tool because it's not working, you can always go to thebazone.com/watch. We always have the show running there. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, Periscope, Facebook, YouTube, and maybe some others later. We're kind of thinking about possibly Twitch, so let us know if any of you are on Twitch. But those are the places that you can find us anytime. If you have any questions, any comments, if you have ideas for shows, if you need help with something, please don't hesitate to reach out. That's what we're here for. If you need a fast answer, let us know so that we can get back to you right away. Otherwise, we'll save it for the next show. Okay?
Okay. Well, thanks again, everybody, for taking the time. I know your time is valuable, and we appreciate you joining us, and hope to see you again next Tuesday, same place, same time, same channel. And have a great week out there. Thank you for coming. Take care.
Bye, everyone.